Thank you for sticking around for part two.
Okay, before I go any further, for those of you that don't even know what Gessera is, I'm going to show you. Okay. Why is Gessera necessary? Now listen to how new age this information is, okay? Okay. Planet Earth and humanity are experiencing a great shift of consciousness, also known as the Ascension or the Great Awakening into Unity Consciousness. Mother Earth is returning to be a sacred planet and is taking the entire human population with her, whoever wants to go. It's a golden age beyond our wildest imaginations. Okay, first of all, Ascension, Great Awakening, Unity Consciousness, Mother Earth, all New Age terminology. New Age is the alien agenda, okay? The Dark Cabal, governing authority, has intentionally and methodically hidden humanity's historical truth, including extraterrestrial occupations and genetic tampering, for over 13,000 years. Its plan was to enslave humanity for its own selfish ends. It almost succeeded. Okay, here they're just basically saying, well, they almost got away with it, but we've stopped them dead in their tracks, and now we're going to drain the swamp. Which, like I said before, it's a trap. All they're doing is handing you to another cabal, the eighth and final regime. So the Galactic Federation of Light and the Forces of Light have been tasked by Prime Creator, another New Age term. There is no Prime Creator. There is a Father Yahweh, and that is it. Prime Creator Source to stop and reverse the momentum of this rebellious and blatant dark cabal and put an end to its deceit and to help humanity and Mother Earth bring into alignment the goals of the great shift in consciousness. Anytime you hear the word consciousness, Ascension, New Age, know that. Here's a rundown of what Gessera is about in the United States. The mandates. ET disclosure for both humanoid and non-humanoid life and existence. Cancel all credit card, mortgage, and other bank debt due to illegal banking and government activities. Yes, the banking and government activities are illegal, but trust me, that's not going to happen. Many refer to this as a jubilee or complete forgiveness of debt. Abolish federal income tax. The United States creates a 17% flat rate on essential new items. Only sales tax revenues for the government. Abolish the IRS. Well, the IRS is completely illegal anyway. It's headquartered in Puerto Rico. Restore constitutional law to all courts and legal matters. Yes, all constitutional courts and legal matters are illegal. They're out of their jurisdiction because we're under the law of the King of Great Britain. That's why there's gold fringe around the flag in every government building, including every courthouse. Remove all Dark Cabal agents and administration officials and all the members of the U.S. Congress from their positions due to their continuous unconstitutional acts. Yes, they are unconstitutional acts, but that's not going to happen. Trust me. Establish new presidential and congressional elections within 120 days of Gessera announcement. Allows the new Republic of the U.S. to temporarily govern the country's affairs until fair and legal elections can be held. Now that sounds good, but why would they even bother to do that if they've been lying to us for the last 150 years since the Organic Act of 1871? Doesn't make sense. International monitors will be present to prevent illegal voter ballot stuffing and fraudulent election activities. Yeah, there are no elections. They're called selections, okay? I don't know if you've seen this whole movement of hashtag walk away. Okay, it sounds good, and yeah, kudos to them for realizing that the Democratic Party is corrupt. But what they don't understand is both parties are the same coin, two sides of the same coin. It doesn't matter if you vote Democrat or Republican, they're selected. Eliminates all state of emergency, thus declaring peace for every land abiding by Gessera and its alliance. There's over 120 countries involved in Gessera, by the way. It's part of the Paris Agreement Act. Allows the new republic to physically remove or eliminate any obstacles impeding Gessera law. Cease all aggressive U.S. government military action worldwide. Forces the U.S. military to immediately remove troops from all sovereign nations that no longer willingly accept them to reside on their soil. Initiates new U.S. Treasury bank system in alignment with constitutional law. Okay, so on and so on and so on. I mean, you get the idea. It's too good to be true because it is, okay?
Now, back during the general election of 2016, primarily the majority would be the awake community that would have been aware of Project Bluebeam. How that was going to be like this whole hologram hoax and projection and all this CGI effects. Well, what would you say if I told you that it's no longer going to be a hoax and that the whole deception is going to be for people to think it's a hoax when in fact it's going to be real? Now, I don't know if you've been following the FAA site. I'll leave a link in the description. But there's a celestial system that's heading to this planet as we speak, and has been for quite some time. When I say celestial system, if you're not familiar with that, it includes multiple planets. Yes, Nibiru, Planet X, Planet 9, Red Dragon, whatever you want to call it, is one of them. And it was originally known during the angelic civilization, according to Sherry Shriner, as Rahab. And that's where Lucifer had his palace before the rebellion. And Father Yahweh knocked it out of the solar system. From my understanding, it was between Jupiter and Mars, if I'm not mistaken. But it was knocked out of the solar system and became basically a planet where all the fallen angels who weren't allowed to roam free and who were judged immediately were imprisoned. And Rahab, Nibiru, whatever you want to call it, has a cycle of 3,600 years. And guess what time it is? So there are multiple planets heading this way that NASA is totally covering up. And I'm not surprised, because all it does is create lies and allow us to see the lies and hide the truth. Where have you heard that before? So I just want to let you know that even the majority of the awake may not know this, but Project Bluebeam, once considered to be a hoax, is in fact going to be real. Now, I don't know if they're going to actually call this Project Bluebeam, or people are just going to assume it is because it's basically what we were supposed to see back then when there was going to be martial law and Obama was going to stay in office. And that was the whole plan. Not sure why that didn't happen. I think too many people got wind of Project Bluebeam and they knew that they could no longer pull it off because too many awake were aware of it. But if they flip the script now and what happens is real and people think it's fake, that's going to be an interesting time, to say the least. Could you imagine, as in the days of Noah, giants roaming the earth and people are thinking, I've seen better CGI in movies. 40-foot giant coming your way and you think it's a hologram, when it's not. Talk about being caught with your pants down. Anyway, I just wanted to make you aware of that because, in my opinion, we haven't seen anything yet. And what we will see will be real because we are in the end times. And part of the end times is the bottomless pit, which is, even though the church and the Bible doesn't mention this in so many words, is space. People think it's coming from the ground. Yes, there will be creatures coming from underneath the ground that have been under there thousands of years. But the bottomless pit is space. And that's where these planets are coming from. And they are going to wreak havoc, as in the days of Noah, as in the days of Lot.
Okay, in the first part, I explained that I was going to expound a little more on why most people are going to be left behind when the quote-unquote rapture takes place. Rapture is not a biblical term. That was concocted, and it's basically a complete deception to give people false sense of security so they're not looking straight ahead, worrying about what's going to happen during the Great Tribulation, because they don't think they're going to be here. So why do they have to even pay attention? That's the deception right there. And I wanted to go into that and explain why that's a deception and what the church is doing to carry that deception. So, if you've heard of the Apocrypha, it was 12 books that was removed from the canon. From my understanding, it's still in the Catholic canon, but it was removed from the English version. But what they're really not telling you is it explains about the end times. And they don't want people to be prepared for the end times because they want you caught with your proverbial pants down. And I'll explain that right now. In the second book of Ezra in the Apocrypha, I'm going to show you some things here. Okay, before we get into the book of Ezra, we're going to start in the book of Matthew. And if you're familiar with end time events, this will look pretty familiar to you. Okay, in Matthew 24:39, it says, "And knew not until the flood came and took them all away. So shall all the coming of the Son of Man be." And then if you go under the next verse, "Then shall two be in the field, the one shall be taken, and the other left." And then 41, "Two women shall be grinding at the mill, the one shall be taken, and the other left." So going back to verse 39, there was no quote unquote rapture during the flood, during Noah's time, but they used the word took, as in swept away, as in killed. So Matthew 24:40 and 41 use a similar word as in taken. And now the church will basically preach that this means those people are raptured that are taken, and not that those that are taken are actually killed, like in the flood. So that's where the false doctrine of the mass rapture comes into play, because everybody thinks, like the rapture movies, millions and millions and millions of people are just going to vanish. It's not going to happen. There is a couple raptures, but they're going to be so small in size compared to the size of the overall population that it's probably going to go unnoticed for the most part. And that's going to involve Father Yahweh's first fruit elect and a portion of the bride. Now, Sherry Shriner and her ministry, she teaches that In the book of Revelation, most people see the 144,000, but they don't realize that Revelation 7 and Revelation 14 are two separate groups of 144,000. Revelation 14 is the first fruit because it explains that they're in heaven singing Moses' song. But in Revelation 7, it talks about the group, the 12 tribes, 12,000 each, to make up the 144,000, are sealed on earth. So how could they be in two places? The first group is raptured, and then the second group is sealed on earth. They never leave. The first group comes back down to help the second group, and the second group goes around preaching the gospel throughout the world to try to awaken the bride for the most part. Because, like I said, the bride is going to be left here, the majority. Despite what the church preaches, they're going to be left here because, as I said in the first part, the Church of Laodicea, that consists of all factions of Christianity because they are found to have guile, apostasies, and idolatry, especially the Roman Catholic Church, the granddaddy of all Christian denominations. Now, why are they found with this, and why are they considered lukewarm and Yahweh was about to spit them out? Because they're following the false Messiah of the New Testament, Paul. Paul's false doctrines overtook the church for the last 2,000 years. So that is why the church of today isn't what you think it is. And I've tried to explain to you, the church doesn't have your best interest at heart. They are teaching deception, including the rapture that they say is going to basically take the entire bride, which is not the case. So you can see in Matthew where the words taken and taken appear to mean the same thing, even though we were never led to believe that in church. I mean, think about it. 2 women, one's taken. 2 in the field, one's taken. That's like half, right? You're led to believe that's half the population. That's not going to happen. So now we go into the second book of Ezra, chapter 13, verse 15. And it starts out by saying, "Shew me now yet the interpretation of this dream. For as I conceive in my understanding, woe unto them that shall be left in those days, and much more woe unto them that are not left behind." And then it goes on to say, "For they that were not left were in heaviness." So in verse 16 is basically telling you that the people that are taken are in more woe than those that are left behind, because those that are left behind have the opportunity to refine themselves and basically, like I said, be martyrs through beheadings in FEMA camps or otherwise and have a second chance. Does that make sense? And then we keep going into the same chapter of Ezra. And down in 18 it says, "Now understand the things that are laid up in the latter days, which shall happen unto them, and to those that are left behind. Therefore are they come into great perils and many necessities, like as these dreams declare." And then 20 and 21, "Yet it is easier for him that is in danger to come into these things than to pass away as a cloud out of the world, and not see the things that happened in the last days. And he answered unto me and said, The interpretation of the vision shall I shew thee, and will open unto thee the thing that thou hast required." And then 22 and 23 says, "Whereas thou hast spoken of them that are left behind, this is the interpretation. He that shall endure the peril in that time hath kept himself. They that be fallen into danger are such as have works and faith toward the Almighty." So basically, it's telling you that, like I said, as long as you're left behind in this scenario, it's a good thing. So if you stop to really think about it, it makes perfect sense. Because Lucifer loves to do things backward or in reverse. I mean, think about it. The movie Left Behind, it depicts all those that are left behind as the people that weren't raptured, when essentially the truth is the people that are left behind are the ones that have the opportunity at salvation through a second chance, through refinement, being martyrs in their faith for Father Yahweh, instead of the ones that are actually taken are the ones that are killed. I mean, think about it. You think Jesus Christ is the true Son's name, but it's Yahushua ben David. You think church religion is Father Yahweh's creation? It's man-made. It's Lucifer's minions who created religion. I mean, the examples go on and on. It's so blatantly obvious when you're awake and you see what's really going on. And this is just another prime example of we're allowed to see the lie while the truth remains hidden. The lie is what we see every day. And unless you're awake, you know nothing other than the lie as being the truth. So why should this be any different? And speaking of Lucifer's minions, hopefully when all this happens, people wake up to Paul and they realize that he was a snake the entire time, and he was basically infiltrating the New Testament with his 13 books. Basically half the New Testament is his books. Nobody else even comes close to having that many books. That's why everybody assumes he's the best apostle of them all, when in fact he was the opposite. He was infiltrating and taking over. Like I said, Yahushua's ministry called the Way, he created his called Christianity at Antioch. You can find that in the book of Acts. And then it goes on to say in 24, "Know this therefore, that they which left behind are more blessed than they that be dead." Right there, it's explaining you're better off being left behind than taken. 25 says, "This is the meaning of the vision, whereas thou sawest a man coming up from the midst of the sea." 26 says, "The same is he whom God the highest hath kept a great season, which by his own self shall deliver his creature, and he shall order them that are." And then if we go to the chapter 16 of the same second Ezra, verse 22 through 26, it reads, "For many of them that dwell upon the earth shall perish of famine, and the other that escape the hunger shall the sword destroy." Now let's go back to the book of Matthew. And I'll show you where that word sword comes up. Matthew 10:34, Yahushua says, "Think not that I am come to send peace on earth. I came not to send peace, but a sword." So it's telling you in that Ezra 16 that the ones that avoided famine, they got the death penalty by the sword, because he's bringing division, not peace. And then 35 goes on to say, "For I am come to set a man at variance against his father, and the daughter against her mother, and the daughter-in-law against her mother-in-law." Now, if you notice, they don't mention anything about kids. No father against kids, no, So to me, that means that kids, at least at a certain age, are probably the exception to the rule when it comes to being raptured, as far as the two groups of 144,000. I'm not saying which group they go in. I believe it's through the righteous parent, from what Sherry Schreiner told me. Um, if they have a righteous parent, they go. If not, I believe they stay because their parents didn't teach them differently. Sad but true. And then moving on to verse 23, it says, "And the dead shall be cast out as the dung, and there shall be no man to comfort them, for the earth shall be wasted, and the city shall be cast down. There shall be no man left to till the earth and to sow it. The trees shall give fruit, and who shall gather them? The grapes shall ripen, and who shall tread them?" Basically, they're saying it's going to be so desolate as far toward the end of the tribulation that there's not going to be many people left, because they're either going to, like I said, die as martyrs, or otherwise, by refining themselves and their faith and love for Father, and basically give up their life in order to prevent having to worship Satan, the Antichrist, when he's going to force that upon people. That's the decision everybody's going to have to make that's left behind. But at least you have that decision to make, and you're not instantly taken. And then we go into the book of Acts, chapter 14, verse 22, confirming the souls of the disciples and exhorting them to continue in the faith, and that we must, through much tribulation, enter into the kingdom of heaven. Right there, it's basically saying that most people are in fact going to be left behind, but they're going to have the opportunity to refine themselves with a second chance, unlike the people that are immediately taken. And they're explaining that all the disciples who were ultimately apostles after they saw Yahushua risen, that they all had to die gruesome deaths. They didn't get raptured. Only Enoch and Elijah, from my understanding, were the only ones that were taken away in body. Everybody else, including all 12 apostles, not 13, we're not counting Paul, all of them experienced brutal deaths. So why should we be any different? And then in Ecclesiastes 12:13, it goes on to say, "Let us hear the conclusion of the whole matter. Fear God and keep his commandments, for this is the whole duty of man." Now, again, Paul tries to explain that the Torah, the Ten Commandments, it no longer applies because Christ died for our sins, so everything's good. Salvation, everyone gets it as long as you believe. It's through grace alone. There's no works required with faith, which is a lie. It's a trap. Don't believe it. It says right here, keep his commandments, for this is the whole duty of man. Where would it say it? Nope, you don't have to do that anymore. We're all good. It doesn't. In fact, not only doesn't the Bible say not to fulfill the commandments, Yahushua himself, going back to the book of Matthew, says in the fulfillment of the law, 17 through 20, "Do not think I have come to abolish the law or the prophets. I have not come to abolish them, but to fulfill them. For I tell you truly, until heaven and earth pass away, not a single jot nor a stroke of a pen will disappear from the law until everything is accomplished. So then, whoever breaks one of the least of these commandments and teaches others to do likewise will be called least in the kingdom of heaven. But whoever practices and teaches them will be called great in the kingdom of heaven. For I tell you that unless your righteousness exceeds that of the scribes of the Pharisees, you will never enter the kingdom of heaven." I mean, clearly, Paul's contradicting Yahushua himself by saying, nope, he died for our sins on the cross through the blood. It's through grace alone. Yet Yahushua himself is saying the complete opposite. I'll let you decide. But the church preaches that, and Paul certainly does, and the church follows what Paul says because the church is indoctrinated by Satan. So, in a nutshell, FEMA camps are for all of those who love Father Yahweh in order to rid the world of his light. Okay, that includes even the ones that are being deceived through Paul's false teachings, because they still have a good heart. They still love Father. And the evil people who had those prisons, death camps constructed are the only ones outside of those who have listened to Sherry Schreiner's ministry, which she gets directly from Father. Believe it or not, it's up to you. They're the only ones that knows there's no mass rapture. The corrupt church preaches a mass rapture, and they're the only ones that know that, who concocted that whole lie. Now they know the majority of the bride will be left here because of apostasy's guile, witchcraft that they have created. So some of those in the majority of the bride who may know about FEMA camps have no doubt in their mind that they won't have to deal with that. Because again, they're probably not paying attention because they don't think they have a reason to. But in actuality, FEMA camps have been constructed for them, in particular, Christians. Ultimately, it's a long green mile, aka walk to your execution, starting at the doorstep of Paul's church. It all comes full circle.
And think about what's really going on behind the scenes as this world is cleaned up, this country has the swamp drained. Are they really draining it because they want to make things better? Or are they draining it because they work for somebody else and they're making room and getting rid of the earlier cabal? Because if you think the current cabal, the reptilian cabal, is bad, the cabal that they're covertly handing the masses off to makes them look like child's play. This will be the 8th and final regime. You've heard the Antichrist from the 8th regime comes out of the 7th regime, as in the current regime. That's what they're talking about. So just be prepared. Get right with your Heavenly Father. Repent and don't take anything lightly.